We are now come to the second half of our session out here. And to take us through that, we have Todd, who is from Planning for Failure. He's a senior principal for Planning for Failure. Planning for Failure. Todd is an agile coach and consultant with a different approach. He believes that when people are empowered to bring their true creativity to their day-to-day work and allowed to collaborate freely, they will achieve far more than they could have in any other situation. Who doesn't agree with that? By combining his background in improv and theater with over 10 years of experience in software industry as a developer, technical lead and manager, Todd has become an expert in helping organizations. Todd today will take us through the lean startup matrix part of the session, and we look forward to hearing. Please help me welcome Todd.
All right, everybody's back, kind of refreshed from me. Everybody's just kind of like ready to go to sleep. So I'm going to ask you guys to stand up because I want to start with a lot of energy. I want you guys to do something here. Just get everybody kind of warmed up in the back of the room. So what I want you guys to do is kind of spread out a little bit so you got enough room so that you're not punching somebody. You want to be able to do kind of this. All right, so what I want you to do is, and I'll demonstrate it slowly first, but we're going to go as fast as we can. So what I want you to do is we're just going to shake it out. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the right hand. Then, and we're going to count it out loud as we do this. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the left hand. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the right foot. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the left foot. And then we'll do it again, but we'll only go to 7. And then we'll do 7, 7, 7, 6, 6, 6, 6, 5, 5. And until we get to 1. We'll go as fast as you can. So you guys ready to do this with me?
Yes.
Yeah? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Louder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep going, keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Nice. Nice. You need energy, right? You need energy to focus. And particularly because we're talking about metrics, and people will want to go to sleep during metrics talks. So I want to make sure you guys have some energy. And so did anybody put their energy felt kind of uncomfortable doing that, particularly at first? And everyone was kind of laughing at the end. Okay, good, because when you're doing lean startup, when you're doing a startup, you're going to feel uncomfortable a lot of the time. A lot of stuff people talk about, a lot of things that Teresa talked about, going out, she went to ING and went and started randomly talking to people. That's not easy to do. That's something that's hard to do. So remember that. And, she mentioned that I do an event called Follow Your Fear Day, and that's important to know because it's important to look at those things and knowing that it's uncomfortable, it makes you uncomfortable, but you have to do it anyways. So make sure you're always making yourself a little bit uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone. And on that, I'm going to be talking about testing and metrics. Fun. So my name is Todd Charron. I'm an Agile coach with Planning for Failure. I coach Agile teams on Agile, Lean, Kanban, Lean Startup, things like that. I also organize an event called Follow Your Fear Day, encouraging people to find things they've always wanted to do but haven't done and do them. So I get people into lots and lots of trouble, which is always fun. So why metrics? Why do metrics matter? So one thing to know is metrics are not about data. You collect as much data as you want, and that's fine. And when you collect data, okay, you can have as much and everything you want, but it's not about just collecting tons and tons of data. The reason you want metrics is because you want to actually generate some sort of insight about your customer behavior. You want to know what it is our customers are doing. Are they doing the things we think they're going to be doing? Yes or no? And it's important to know that metrics will only tell you what your customers do. They won't tell you why your customers do what they do. So you can't rely too much on the metrics to answer all your questions. And for that, as Teresa also mentioned, and David McClure coined the phrase TTYFU or TTYFC, talk to your fine users, your customers. Not quite the word David McClure used, but this is a PG-rated talk, so we'll go about that. And much like Dave McClure, I'm not a metrics expert. I'm not going to go into how to use certain tools like KISS metrics or whatever. I'll touch on them a little bit on what they are. But that's not really what metrics in Lean Startup are about. It's not about generating hundreds of reports and things like that. It's about something else, and we're going to kind of cover that high-level overview of everything that is behind that. So Eric Ries in his Lean Startup book coined the term innovation accounting. And the reason he had to coin innovation accounting is because he found that traditional accounting doesn't really match up when you're in a startup. Like if you're in a certain department in a large organization that exists, well, you can have certain metrics to be measured against. You know, you're in the sales, you've got your sales quota, you're expected to do this every quarter, and you can measure that. If you're in a startup, how do you know? You don't even know what your product is when you're starting out. You don't know what your customers are. You don't know what they're going to pay for and how much they're going to pay. So you need some sort of way to kind of measure progress that traditional methods don't apply. So that's where innovation accounting comes in. So it answers the question, how do you set sales goals when you don't even know who your customers are? So first thing you need to do is establish the baseline. And we do that with your MVP. And your MVP is your minimum viable product, not your Montel Montavious Porter. Everyone gets that reference. Maybe a few people. So one of the key things to remember is what is a minimum viable product. A lot of people, when they first get in the Lean Startup or they read Eric Ries's book, they think that it's like, oh, well, it's a product that has a certain amount of features on it, you put it out there and you sell it. It's like, well, no, you can go even smaller than that. It can be a landing page, like Teresa shows. You can have a landing page that just has an email sign up. That can test a hypothesis. You can have a survey. You can have, or the best one of all, of course, just TTYFU, talk to your customers. Go out there with a set of questions and say, okay, we're going to ask 10, 15, 20, 30 people these questions, and we suspect that X percentage will answer one way, and then do that. That can be your very, very first baseline metric. It's just that simple, doing that much. So after you get that data back, you have to make a decision. Like Teresa demonstrated in her talk and her chart, you have to decide whether you want to pivot or whether you want to persevere. And the only way you can just make that decision is from an informed standpoint, and that is to actually collect data and metrics. So going out and talking to customers, but making sure that you're asking the same questions, that you've got a kind of standardized base that you're going from, and that you're measuring that and saying, well, we suspected that 6 out of 10 people would have this problem, and only 1 out of 10 did. Okay, so you have to figure out, what am I going to do? This is my big idea to change the world, and only 1 out of 10 people said they were interested in it at all, so what are you going to do? You can throw it away, but that's not really a pivot, right? Does everybody know what a pivot is here? Going to back up a bit? So just to clarify, so a pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision. So you have a vision, how you want to change the world, what you want your product to do, what problem you think it's going to solve. You have a vision. Your pivot is to change to something to adjust to that strategy. So you may look at, well, only 1 out of 10 answered. Well, this 1 out of 10 is in a particular segment. So maybe we'll actually, instead of going for the general populace, we'll focus on just that segment. And maybe we can find our solution there. That's a pivot. If you just say, well, 1 out of 10, let's throw it out and do something completely different, that's just a new business. You're not pivoting at that point, you're just throwing it away and starting from scratch, which is fine. You may have to do that at some point, but it's not a pivot. Anybody else heard of vanity metrics? Dan? Anybody have some good examples of vanity metrics? You want to share something out?
Number of hits?
Number of hits, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Number of hits, Facebook likes, Twitter followers. Doesn't really matter, it doesn't really tell you anything. Did anybody watch the presidential debate last night? Mm-hmm. Some great vanity metrics coming out of that. How many people mentioned Obama and how many people mentioned Romney? I don't care. Even who won the debate is a vanity metric, because it doesn't matter. The only question at the end of the day that's going to matter is, who are you going to vote for after hearing the debate? Who you think won is irrelevant, but you're still going to vote for the other guy. So those are vanity metrics. You have to be they're very dangerous, because everybody wants to do those presentations where they have the little hockey stick curve graph. It goes up and to the right. Yeah, we're increasing our hits, we're increasing our even revenue, right? Because the problem with vanity metrics is we don't know why. Okay, you got more hits, you got more customers. Great. Why? Well, your developer's going to say, well, it's the new feature we released. That's bringing in all the traffic. The marketing team will say, no, it's our marketing campaign we ran. But you don't know. So it's impossible to figure out, well, what do I do next based on this? Whether the numbers go up or whether they go down, I don't know what to do next. So you need something more than that. And so Eric Ries coined his 3 A's of metrics. They have to be actionable. So at the end, you have to know, what am I going to do? So the same thing we just kind of mentioned is, what am I going to do with this now that I see this number go up? What does it mean? You have to be accessible. And you have to be able to say, no, this is very clear, and this is what the data is actually saying. And everybody agrees that this is the number we're shooting for. So when you're talking to customers, you said you're asking them a question, you think you have a hypothesis that says 6 out of 10 will answer in the affirmative. So then you know, when only 5 out of 10 do, everyone's on the same page. We did not hit our goal. We did not actually match our hypothesis. They have to be auditable. You have to actually make sure that it comes from the canonical data source that it comes from, that people can track it down. Because again, when you're killing people's pet projects, they're going to be like, well, is that data really accurate? I mean, it might have missed some hits here and there, or it might have missed a click here and there. And, well, let's check it out. We have to actually go down and check that out. So how do we get the 3 A's? First off, Eric Ries has a very famous quote, metrics are people too. And what this means is that every metric you have, you want to be able to tie back to specific users. So that when you get into the audible part, you can say, well, okay, 6 out of 10 said this or not. Which 6? Which 6 of our users? Do we have their email address? Do we have their phone number? Can we contact them and follow up with them? So that we know. When they say, okay, well, I don't know if that's accurate. Well, here's the names. Here are the people, right? We actually can trace that back to these people actually behaved this way and these people did not. Cohort metrics. Oh, that's like a thing. Anybody familiar with cohort metrics or what a cohort is? No? Okay. All right. I don't know. You're talking later. You don't get it.
I don't really know.
Okay, so when we look at a lot of data, and a lot of, this is why I talk about this instead of a lot of tools first, because a lot of tools don't really support things like cohort metrics very well. They'll show you things like funnel graphs. It's like, well, we got this many users, this many people signed up, this many people converted. But that measures everybody over an indefinite period of time. And it's very hard to find useful data out of that. So what you want to do is you want to segment your users into groups or cohorts. So you can do it by, so the example here, let's say this was September. This was the month of September, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So people who first came to the site in that period of time. So that way we can start to figure out, well, did some feature that we launched to our site actually have an impact? And we can tie it back to the week. And it doesn't have to be weeks. You can also combine weeks with something else, like you can do, the old AOL age sex location. You can do that. You can do behaviors, the way different people go, or different customer segments of groups, types of customers, that you have people who are signed up to your premium plans versus your basic plans. Anything you can do, you're going to have to figure out what that is for your business. But whatever it is, figure out some way that you have a specific way of segmenting groups to actually test your hypothesis against these people. So in this example, we've got, okay, in order to actually even get into this, you have to have clicked 3 links. So we know you're basically a user of the site, right? So all of those, we see those going up and to the right, 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, great. Signed up for the webinar, 700, 800, 850, 950. But that number doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the conversion percentage, right? So 72, 70, 72, 71, 73. So roughly about the same. So we know over this 4 weeks that even though the number of people went up, just because maybe word of mouth is getting out of our product or whatever, but we know that nothing we've done over the last 4 weeks has dramatically changed whether people are going to sign up or not. So then we check attended webinar, and we see 55, 59, 63, and 35. So suddenly we see a drop off. So this is now something more useful than just looking at an overall funnel where that won't actually impact your overall percentage as much. So you see that it dropped there in week 4. So now you can ask the question, well, what did we do in week 4? What specific action did we take in week 4? And now we know that it had a negative effect. And you can even do one more than this, which is you can do A/B or split testing. So A/B or split testing is we're going to take a new feature, put it on our site, and instead of just putting it live on the site for everybody and crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, we're going to split it so that half get the new feature and half get the regular site. And then we can look at that week 4 metric and say, okay, that dropped. Now, was it the segment that was actually in getting the new feature, or was it the one who didn't? If it was, we know specifically that the new feature caused a drop. So in that example, maybe you switched webinar service providers, and suddenly you get a drop off. Half the people use the old webinar software, half the people use the new, and you get that drop off. They're like, oh man, there's something wrong with the new webinar software. We should fix that. Now you have something specific and actionable you can act on. It's also important to focus on the customer journey and their life cycle. So it's not as important to focus on a specific behavior as it is everything you want that customer to do through the time that they're there. So the example that we had there was they come to the site, they're an activated user, they do some stuff, they sign up for a mailing list, they get pitched in the webinar, and then they buy your product. That's the entire life cycle. Focusing on the little things, like hits, is not all that useful. Optimizing for that is not going to really make you, I don't care if I have more hits if I'm still selling the same amount of product at the end of the day. It doesn't make a difference. And in that same vein, you want to measure the macro. Okay, so you changed the sign up button from blue to green, and now hundreds of thousands of people are clicking the button. Okay, again, I don't care. Do more people sign up for your webinar? Do more people buy your product? That's what I care about. So a lot of people be like, it works, people are clicking, but if they're still dropping off, I don't care. And to that vein, measure what matters. And less is more. So you really want to focus, as far as metrics go, on really no more than like 3 to 5 big things. Like you saw in there, there's only like 4 things in that sample funnel. You want to focus on what is really important to you guys. What's really going to make it matter? So when you think about what matters, things like revenue, things like conversion on certain pieces of your site, and only measure those things. You get these big tools and they will produce hundreds of thousands of reports for you, but they're all useless. You really want to focus on, these are the only things that matter, the rest is just noise, and filter it out. So pirate metrics, R! Everybody say R! R! Get people back. So Dave McClure coined pirate metrics because he has a very nice acronym that goes with it. It's R. R! All right, nice. Stands for acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. R. There we go. One thing people often mistake about this is it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order. It just makes a nice acronym when you do it this way, so people can remember it. But it doesn't have. You don't have to do it in this order. So we'll go through these a little bit. So first up is acquisition. Where are users coming from, right? Are they coming via your Facebook page, your Twitter account, Google Ads that you're buying? Where are they coming from? So that's one specific way you can look at your users and kind of see differences and improvements and measure their journey. Activation, this one's very important. What do they do that indicates to you that when they came to your site, they had a good time, right? That they were engaged with your product. So the example there that I threw was just an example, click 3 links. Okay, maybe that's it. Maybe they stayed on your site for about 30 to 60 seconds, or they commented on a blog post, they did some sort of action that shows that they were actually an engaged user on your site. They didn't just randomly, hit stumble upon and end up on your site and then be like, ah, man, I don't want this. Get out of here, right? We need to know that these people are here and they want to be here. Retention. So for retention, we want to make sure they come back, right? So if they sign up for a mailing list and you send them an email, do they open it? Do they read it? Do they have multiple visits to your site? Do they click on multiple links? What is showing that they are actually coming back to use your product or whatever it is again at some point in time? Revenue, this one should be obvious. Are they buying stuff? And referral, are they talking to people about this? Are they telling their friends about this? Are they evangelists for your product? Are they talking about how great your product is? It's awesome if they do that, and you want to measure that. So these, when you're starting up, you may want to focus on these first. Typically, if you're building some type of product, you definitely want to focus on these things first before you know that you have your product market fit, before things have taken off. Because if people aren't engaged with your product and they aren't coming back to use your product, then you don't really have a product. That's great that you drive a whole bunch of traffic to it through a Google ad, through acquisition or whatever, but if they're not coming back, you've got really nothing to engage with and to build upon, and it's unlikely you're ever going to get revenue from them. So really focus on that up front. And some pieces like B2B, sometimes you want to focus on revenue first just when you're dealing in big enterprises. Most of the time, you're probably going to be working at activation and retention first. So hypothesis testing. This is going to cover a little bit of some of the stuff people talked about before, but this is really vitally important. Before you have a tool for any metrics, before you validate any of this stuff, validate your hypothesis with actual customers. So you've got a customer hypothesis. You think you know who they are, but they might not. There is a very good chance that the people whose problem you think you are solving don't have the problem you think they have, but somebody else might. So you have a problem hypothesis. We believe that this is a problem. Maybe it's not. I remember I spoke to one guy. I was working with a team at Lean Startup Machine, And the product we were working on was a social network site to connect artists to people who were hiring artists. Because the hypothesis of the problem was that it's a hard time for people to find good talent, for talent to find work. Turns out not the case at all. Not at all. I talked to one friend of mine who was formerly a talent who is now moved into production. And he's like, you know what, when I look for talent, I pay $30 to this service, they send me a bunch of names and headshots, I pick who I want, I audition them, and it's done. That's not my problem. But then he went on to say, my really big problem is, kind of similar to what entrepreneurs have, is I don't know how to get funding. I'm looking for grant applications take forever. It's a whole legal mess I have to go through. If you can solve that problem for me, that would be awesome. It's like, oh, well that's interesting. So now we can make the decision of whether we want to pivot to something like that. Is that our customer, and is that the problem we want to solve based on that? Because clearly the problem we originally had was not. So then focus on your solution. So when people come into Lean Startup Machine, everybody goes up and pitches. And everybody pitches, they're like, I have got this thing this is my solution to solve this problem. I don't care. Because until you've validated your problem and your customer, it doesn't matter what your solution is. Only at the point where you actually know that these people exist and they have this problem and they'd love to have it solved, then pitch them a solution. Otherwise, they don't want to hear about your solution. They want to hear, how are you going to solve my problem once you know that they have this problem. I don't want to go to somebody who doesn't have my problem and say, hey, I want to sell you this product. It's going to solve all your problems. It solves this problem. And you're going to be like, okay. So don't waste your time focusing too much on the solution at first. Run experiments. This is a good way to validate your customer and problem hypothesis. TTYFU, again, always start with that. It's the cheapest, easiest way you can start up, and it will save you tons and tons of time, but it's very hard to do because people don't like putting themselves out there and talking to people. It will make you very uncomfortable. You can do surveys. I don't like surveys as much as actually talking to your customers because you don't get that kind of open-ended response. Like when I got the response from the guy who told me, you know what my real problem is? Well, he's not going to put that in a survey. So really getting out there and getting that will get you much more useful data. But surveys can help you scale out once you have a core group of people that say, okay, we do have this problem, and we want to make sure that a larger group has it. Then you can look at things like surveys. Landing pages, of course, are great. You can advertise, hey, we have this problem, this product that solves this problem. Sign up if you want it. Do they sign up? Doesn't matter if you have the product. If they won't sign up for it, see if they will. Same thing with feature fakes. You can say, okay, we've got this feature where it's in limited beta right now. You can sign up to be one of our beta users. Put in your email address and we'll let you know. If nobody puts in their email address, it's a good thing you're not beta testing that product yet because you haven't built it. If you had built it, well, now you've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, which when you start up, you usually don't have a lot of either of those things. Kill features. It's probably the most important thing. If you have an existing product, kill features, remove them. If people aren't using them, it's just taking up time, it's wasting space, it's making your code, if you're a software company, much harder to deal with. And always focus on, whenever you're saying, well, what if it had this feature? Only build that feature if it moves a metric. So I mentioned earlier, you got 3 to 5 metrics. If it doesn't move one of those and you don't have a hypothesis that it is going to move one of those, don't build it. If it's not going to increase conversion of this, it's not going to sell more of this, don't build it. So when along with that, have very few metrics. And know what metrics should move. That should always be part of your hypothesis. So we think that more people will sign up for our webinar if we do this. Okay. Do that. How much? Pick a number that you know you should hit. Find out if you do when you test it. The other thing is marketers love features. They love features. They love to have features. Features are a very convenient way to re-engage with customers. We can have a new marketing blast that says, check out our new feature. That's a really, really expensive way to talk to your customers, when you could just actually just go and talk to your customers. And so most marketers want to have features just for that engagement point. And so usually you can kind of just go back and say, well, why don't we just actually go talk? Let's just do that instead of waiting until we have this big feature that's going to take us 6 months to build and send out a marketing blast, because that's not going to be very useful when we could just look them up in our customer database and call them. So I'm going to tell a story that I heard recently. It's a story about a company called AppSumo. Does anybody know AppSumo? A few people know AppSumo. So AppSumo is a daily deal site, kind of like Groupon, except it's kind of more entrepreneur, geek-oriented, like Learn HTML5 or business blueprint stuff that they offer discounts on. And when they first started out, they had one guy who wrote all their copy that they emailed out to people. He wrote some really cool, entertaining copy. So he personified the sumo. So every email you got came from Chief Sumo or Fat Ass Sumo or whatever it was. That was what it came from. It was this long email that would tell this story about how like they abducted the owner of this company and they got him to give him a discount. And they were pretty funny. And at the end it would have the link to buy the product. And so people would share them, they were funny, they'd laugh at them. And they started scaling out, they started growing. And so they hired more copywriters because they were getting tons more products and stuff. They kind of lost a bit of that, and they started looking at their click-through rates, and they were like, Groupon has really good click-through rates, and our click-through rates aren't that great. What do? They said, well, okay, Groupon has big pictures and a little bit of text, a little teaser text, and people click to find out more about the offer, and their click-through rates through the roof. So we should do that. So they started doing that. So this is kind of focusing on the micro, right? They were focusing on just the click-through rates for the emails. And so their click-throughs went up. They went through the roof. They had a whole bunch more click-throughs. What they ended up noticing was that their overall conversion went down a little bit. And not only that, but worse, their email open rate plummeted. People stopped reading their emails. Because people would read emails for deals they weren't even interested in, just to hear the story of the sumo and this, just because it was a fun read. They'd share it on Twitter, and nobody was sharing these new emails. So word was never getting out about it, and they completely lost engagement. But because they were looking at the micro metric at first, it was like, oh, this is doing great. This new thing is doing great. Click-throughs are up. But overall, the things that mattered were going down. So they recently did a kind of mea culpa where they talked about this and how they're kind of going back to get back to this original premise. And that's kind of the danger which can happen when you look at kind of on the micro level of metrics. So you really always want to focus on that customer journey and on those metrics that really matter and not those ones, vanity metrics and things that don't. So tools, just a brief mention of those. Google Analytics, KISS Metrics, Mixpanel, they all provide stuff. A lot of them don't do a lot of this stuff very well. I know Heat and Shaw, KISS Metrics is very big in the Lean Startup community, so I know they've been focusing a lot on improving a lot of that stuff. But really the key thing is, when you're starting out, you don't have that much data anyways. Don't spend hours focusing on which tool is the right tool for us, how much are we going to pay for this, how are we going to fund it. Just start tracking this stuff yourself. You can just do like index cards on walls for our customers that we signed up this week because you don't have them when you start. So why waste time figuring out this tool if you've got 5 people who sign up a week? Then you just put them up there. Who are the people? They are the people. And then you put a little mark when they actually do something useful and measure that there. And what you'll find is you kind of develop the metrics that matter there, and once you start to scale, then you're like, okay, now we know what we need to measure. Now we find a tool that helps us do that. If you start to do it the other way around, you get a tool that has 1,000,001 features, but may not in the end actually do what you need it to do. So just always be very, very wary of that. So that's it for me. I'm out of time. I think Todd Charron. Thank you guys very much. Any questions? Yes.
I thought that was really, really interesting, actually, because I think that's one of the major things that investors will be looking at when you talk to them. Right?
Yeah.
My question is in regards to a landing page. So one of the common things I can see or hear, especially at entrepreneurs networking events, is, well, you just get a landing page and you get people sign up, and then that's your traction, at least initially, some sort of traction.
Yeah.
Right? But if you look at the AARR, they get really deep into it, up to revenue, right? And sometimes a landing page obviously doesn't do that. So how beneficial is a landing page to a startup entrepreneur?
So the landing page helps you validate your customer and problem hypothesis, right? I suspect that people have this problem. So I have a hypothesis around that. If nobody signs up, then it doesn't matter what the revenue model is going to be, right? Because now we know nobody wants this product. Now, if people do sign up, now you've got it in, right? Now that's somebody who's activated, right? They've engaged. To give away their email address is kind of important. And you have an avenue to contact them now. So now you send them an email. And now you can have TTYFU with them and figure out stuff, and then that kind of moves you a little further along. And the more people you talk to, you'll start to refine what people actually want. You'll find your product market fit, and then you'll kind of work into those other things. So one of the things is, when you engage with them is, okay, and this sounds like a startup machine. One of the things we always tell people, particularly in regards to revenue, when you get somebody, you find out they have that problem, they're the customer, they have that problem, when you pitch them the solution, ask them to pay for it right there. Be like, okay, we're offering our product. I think Teresa, you guys had a mobile web app you were offering, which wasn't built. You're like, it's going to be 99 cents. You give me $1 now, and we'll get you the app as soon as it's ready. And you know, they find out. Because a lot of people will say, oh, that sounds like a great product. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, pay for it. Oh, well, money's kind of tight right now. I'm not going to do this, not going to do that. All right. Well, I guess you're not really that interested, right? So that's more validation. That's like, okay, maybe we have a product people are interested in, but they're not willing to pay for it. Okay? Now we can pivot and find, is there somebody else who will pay for it? Can we do it through advertising or through something else and still do this product? Or is it not worth it? You kind of make that. It also allows you to kind of set pricing as well. There's one team I know that went, they said, okay, here's our product, here's our pitch, buy it, $10. I said, all right, $10, I'll buy it. Great. Went to the next customer, $20. Yeah, you'll still buy it? All right. Next customer, $40. Yeah? Okay, all right, $40. 60. Oh, no, not 60. All right, we're probably around $40 then. So it kind of helps you test your pricing as well, right? And you can kind of reach out and do this stuff. But the landing page, to go back to your original point, is really essential for building connections to customers and kind of validating that customers are interested in having their problem solved.
Have you tried going the other way, maybe by firstly going to Google searches to see what people are searching for, to see if that might be somewhere you start saying, okay, well, obviously they're all searching, I don't know, for cowboy boots, maybe I should make cowboy boots.
Yeah, I mean, the context I'm kind of speaking in is when you already have an entrepreneur with like a vision, right? I have a vision on what I want to do. If you don't, great place to look. Just look to see what kind of market needs are out there. But then once you have that, that's only a hypothesis, right? So you have a hypothesis, a lot of people are searching for cowboy boots. People must really want cowboy boots. That's an assumption, right? Now, how do we turn that and validate that? Well, maybe we pick up some Google ads for cowboy boots or a landing page for cowboy boots for a new store or whatever, and kind of do that and measure that. So it's good to kind of help you generate ideas around something and get to your initial hypothesis to do that as well. Yeah?
A landing page, do you mean the Facebook landing page?
No, trying to give you an example of a landing page. I know Teresa showed one in hers. It's like, they'll go to a site and they'll say, so-and-so's got a new book, it's coming out March 4th. To find out more about it, put in your email address here, right? That's a landing page. So it's like, all it is, here's something about the product, here's what it is, give us some information, we'll keep you in touch, or we'll give you
It's a web page or?
What's that?
It's a web page.
Yeah, give me a web page.
Quick question. Who helped you
Keep it for
create
the
your-
end, Alex. I must stop.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry about that.
Fair enough. All right,
Thank you very much. Doug, thank you so much.